It's all about working on your mind, and then your body follows, and then your life follows. It's in that order, exactly. Mind, body, and then life. If you're stuck, if you're in a rut, if you're spinning your wheels, focus on improving your mindset, focus on improving those skills. As a byproduct, your body will begin to follow. And then as a byproduct of that, your life will begin to follow. I promise. I promise. This is the formula to getting it to work. Mind, body, life. Welcome back to another episode of The Painful Purpose, a platform where we discuss the different philosophies of mental discipline and engage with some of the most exceptional minds to unravel the paths and principles taken in their pursuit to mental mastery. Today's a very special episode because we were talking about something that is very important to me in regards to how I got to the position that I'm in today. And when I'm talking about position, I'm referring to my mindset and my goals and the way that I think about pursuing these things. This was all done through a program called 75 Hard. Now, some of you may have heard of this by seeing others do it online. It's a rather popular thing that people pursue, but sometimes people misunderstand the purpose and the meaning of it. 75 Hard is a mental toughness program that is designed to rewire the way that you think about pursuing goals and taking on challenges on a day-to-day basis, on a monthly basis, on a yearly basis, and in the grand scheme of your life. 75 Hard is 75 days of 2 workouts a day. One has to be outdoors, and them not being consecutive. Drinking 1 gallon of water a day, taking a photo of yourself every single day, sticking to a diet and not deviating at all, so no cheat meals, and that includes no alcohol, and reading 10 pages of a nonfiction book every single day for 75 days consecutively. The catch to this program is that the further along that you get into this program, the greater the stakes become. So what do I mean by that exactly? If you are 10 days into the program and you've met the requirements every single day, and on day 11, you miss your gallon, you drink 127 ounces of 128, you read 9 pages instead of 10 pages, you have to start over on day 1. So when I say the stakes get higher as you move along and move further into the program, that's exactly what I mean. If you're on day 72, you're going to bet for sure that you're not going to miss anything because you don't want to start and lose 2.5 months of work, right? And that's a great way to keep people in line, right? It provides a structure for people, which is a great way to be a catalyst to help get the ball rolling, so to speak. And that was what it served for my life. It really helped me get in shape and get into a routine that allowed me to start building momentum. And momentum is so important, especially in this context, because once you begin to see the benefits and physically, mentally see the benefits, and it becomes easy, it becomes a routine, it's part of your daily habits, it no longer feels as difficult as it used to be on the first few days. So I want to talk about why I did 75 Hard. So, like many others that if they have done this program can probably relate to, 75 Hard came at a point in my life where I felt dissatisfied. I felt dissatisfied with who I was and not optimizing my life at that point. So this occurred at the last few days before I graduated with my undergraduate degree. I wasn't exercising. I was scathing by school. Regardless to say, I was a good student because I consider myself intelligent enough to learn how to do things the most efficient way without having to do things the right way sometimes. This concept of working smarter, not harder. And that's something that I always lived by. But the reality is, and I'll go into this more, is that sometimes in life, taking the smart route is not always the correct way to go. And why I say that is because we find growth through struggle. We find growth through adversity. We truly learn about ourselves and we create pride when we're able to push through a difficult situation, whether it is in school, in work, in a relationship, to the point where when you reach the end of the road and you can look back at what you accomplished, seeing the other route that you could have taken, but you took the correct route, there's that sense of pride. And that's something that I didn't understand until later on in my life after this program, well after this program. But this program was a big contributor to getting to that point where I realized this was an important piece of becoming the person I want to be. So it was graduation day, and I always say it like this. Graduation is supposed to be a milestone in your life where you've accomplished a big feat. 4 years, 5 years, 3 years, however many years it takes you to achieve whatever degree it is that you're pursuing. And you reach that finish line. So you look back and see everything you've done, all the hours of work you've put in, and there's supposed to be that sense of gratitude and self-pride and excitement because you're excited for what's next and you're excited that you can leave that chapter behind knowing that you've done the most that you can do. However, for me, I didn't feel that way. I felt rather the opposite, which was unfulfilled. I felt like I cheated my way through. I'm not saying that I was cheating literally, but I felt like I had cheated through opportunities. I cheated myself. Why did I cheat myself? Because I didn't optimize opportunities that were around me. In other words, I wasted them, right? So I'm talking about opportunities to get more involved, opportunities to learn more and connect with more people and maximize the opportunities in front of me, right? And that's the whole point of school and college. I think that is not expressed enough. And maybe just in my lens, I didn't see that well enough at the time, was there's just so many resources around you and so many people who are willing to help, whether it's school related or extracurricular related, health related. You have friends that are going to the gym. You can meet friends at the gym. It's all inclusive, right? So you have the opportunity, but it's just a matter of taking advantage of that opportunity versus letting it slip. So without getting too further in detail and too off track, that's how I felt. And I needed something to prove to myself that I can still find that pride within me. And shortly after, I can't remember exactly how 75 Hard came to my plate, but I would imagine it's something through social media. And I learned about Andy Frisella. So Andy Frisella is the creator of 75 Hard. He also is the founder of a company called First Form, which is a supplement company. They make protein powders and all sorts of supplements. And I listened to the first podcast about 75 Hard and learning about what it entailed. And mind you, I was going into a summer break before I entered graduate school. So I decided I was going to go back to school for one more year. So I had 2 months of time where I had essentially nothing to do, right? Which plays into another reason why there's no excuse not for me to not try something like this, right? The number one thing that I want to address right now is there's lots of different people on this earth with lots of different scenarios, lots of things that they're going through. I'm not married. I don't have kids. I didn't even have a job at the time. So my responsibilities were minimal. But I'm trying to explain in this episode what got me to a better place. And that's through this program. So I understand that if you're listening and you have already thought to yourself, well, this person has this and I didn't have that. So therefore, I'm not going to be able to do that, right? I work this many hours. I have to care about this person, so on and so forth. I have kids to worry about. The point is, those things are obstacles. And there are many other people around here on this earth that have the same obstacles, if not more obstacles to deal with. And they've been able to succeed. There's someone who was pregnant, multiple people who've been pregnant that have achieved this program. So back to what I was saying. Andy Frisella, listen to the first podcast of 75 Hard, and it amped me up. I didn't realize at the time, but I love an idea of a challenge that you are uncertain of the outcome, right? I didn't know if I could do this, because it's a long commitment. It's 2.5 months, which in reality, in the big scheme of things, it's not a long time. 75 days is not a long time to achieve what you can get from this program and also take away the skills, because essentially what you're building here is a toolbox of mental skills, and that includes discipline and self-control and self-accountability. That's what it really boils down to. And that's all done through completing 5 simple tasks. So 75 hard is 5 simple tasks, like I already explained. 2 workouts a day, one has to be outdoors, 45 minutes at least, and non-consecutive. So you can't go from your indoor gym workout to running outside at the same time. I would say 3 hours is a good time to separate the workouts. And that is intended to be inconvenient so that you have to plan around the things that you're doing with your day. If you've listened to another podcast on this channel before of The Painful Purpose, you have probably heard me say, failing to plan is planning to fail. And that's the number one saying that I live by. And it was literally catalyzed through this experience, because you have to plan your day before it begins. Every day of this program, I had to know what I was doing, what I was going to be eating, where I was going to be, time and day, so that I could be successful. And the reason why is because it makes it easier. If you wake up in the morning, you said, okay, I got this much stuff to accomplish. What am I going to do it? How am I going to do it? Curveballs come out of the way and you have to adjust, right? If you already have your plan set, at least a generic structure, it's going to make things a lot easier. So 75 days, 2 workouts, drinking a gallon of water every single day, taking a photo of yourself every single day, which seems easy, and it is easy. It takes a little bit of time, but the purpose of this is to track your physical progress, but also to pay attention to details. So one of the things that I have learned since my time finishing 75 hard is that I've had moments where I've fallen back into that spot or further below than when I began, right? And I would say a contributor, and Andy has said this himself as well, is that you begin to lose track of the details and paying attention to the small things that you do in your day-to-day basis while you're working your way up, that ultimately contributes to you getting to that big goal and you achieving those large feats that you're pursuing. So taking a photo of yourself, reading 10 pages of a nonfiction book. For me, even to this day, I still struggle with just sitting down and reading. And I think I could lean on the fact that I'm younger and I have social media and I have a phone, and that's a distraction and blah, blah, blah. But it's because I still lack the discipline to just sit down and put it away and focus on something. But I can tell you something, as soon as you begin to build that momentum, like I spoke about earlier, it is so addicting to continue your progress, especially once you get hooked into a book. When you're turning the pages, and as you get deeper and deeper into the book, you can physically see your progress, which is why Andy expresses that this has to be a physical book, no audiobooks, no Kindles. It has to be a physical book that you can turn the pages because you physically see the progress. And then lastly is the diet, which is arguably the most difficult thing next to the water. The water is really tricky because it's something you have to keep track of and you have to start early. It's something you have to do constantly. Get a big water bottle. For me, I think a 64-ounce water bottle, which is half a gallon, is the best way to do it because you just got to drink it twice. 2 fill-ups a day, and then you're done. And as you do more activity, it becomes easier to do because you're drinking more, you need more water, so on and so forth. But when it comes to the diet, this is really tricky because it's something you have to do every single day. You have to eat, right? And you can't have a cheat meal. So I don't know if you've noticed, but if you have never heard of 75 hard before, and this is the first time you've been exposed to this information, you might have realized that there's no specificity as to what diet, as to what workouts, as to XYZ, right? I'm not telling you you have to be plant-based for 75 days. You have to do HIIT workouts for 75 days. The whole point is to create this program around your interests and your curiosities and adjust accordingly, right? So for me, I really enjoyed running, and not nearly to the point where I'm at today. I simply went out, ran for 30 minutes here and there, went to the gym like any other person that didn't really know any different. And that was my routine. So I started diving into this. And it was good. It was healthy for what it was at the time. And this is before I started 75 hard. And so when it began, I figured this will be my routine. I will run as my outdoor workout, and then I will do the gym as my indoor workout. Again, I'm thinking ahead before it even begins, right? And then in terms of diet, I will just eat clean. I'm going to meal prep, chicken, blah, 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 right? That eventually changed to becoming a plant-based diet during this program. I think about 2 weeks in, I decided that I wanted to try something new and mitigate and eliminate meat in my diet, which is something that I continued on for 2 years until this January. And the whole point of all these things, which is another point that I want to talk about, I don't want to get off track too much, but one of the greatest takeaways of 75 Hard for me, and I'm sure for other people, is the things that you don't see coming, is the benefits that you don't see at the beginning of the story. And what I mean by that is the fact that I would eventually become plant-based for 2 years and learn so much more about a certain area that I previously was ignorant to. When I was about 3 weeks into this program, I had sprained my ankle and couldn't run. And so what choice did I have? Well, I have a bike. I had a bike sitting in the garage that was, 20 years old. Pump up the tires, get it cleaned up, start riding. And then the riding turns into a reach out from someone, a friend of a friend, who said, hey, there's this local triathlon. I've been seeing what you're doing lately. You should try this. And then joining that triathlon race, moving to Colorado, joining the triathlon club here in graduate school, meeting a ton of new people, racing 2 Ironmans, gaining all sorts of knowledge, eventually loving running, and then running a sub-3 marathon this year. So it's like all these things. And along the way, a ton of people I've met, a ton of knowledge I've gained, a ton of respect I've gained from other people. That's all things that if you would have said to me on day one, I could not have believed you, because it's hard to materialize what could be whenever you don't see it, right? I'm not going to be able to understand how that could be possible because I haven't seen it happen. And it all starts with just putting yourself in these positions, right? Being opportunistic. I'm going to go out and I'm going to try these things. So I want to go into the first week of this program. And I believe it's the hardest time of this program because that's when everything's so new, right? I would narrow it down to this. It's 100 hours, which is 4 days, roughly. 100 hours to get used to something new. The first 4 days suck. They suck because your entire body's sore. At least for me, when I started this program, I was not very active. I ran here and there, maybe once or twice a week, and went to the gym. And I struggled with consistency very often. So at a certain point, when you're doing the gym workouts, I was going along the idea of segments, right? So upper body, lower body, arms, legs, so on and so forth. But sooner than later, you're going to run out of, body parts. So you're going to have to start revisiting the old ones. And by the 4th day, I was so sore that I literally didn't know if I could work out. And that's where you have that voice in your mind that begins to ask you, what am I doing? Is this even worth it? Am I crazy? Like, I don't have to do this. No one's forcing me to do this. And that's the beautiful thing about 75 Hard is that it's just simply a battle against yourself. You're also your own coach. You are also the figure who keeps you accountable. There's not somebody who's going to make sure you're drinking a gallon of water every day. There's not someone who's tracking whether or not you met the requirements of your workouts or whether or not you had a cheat meal. It's all about you. And that's the biggest takeaway of this program and why people can say it's a physical challenge. It's all about mental discipline. And that's what this program builds. It's all about being consistent, being accountable, and building that skill set. Like Andy says, this is a muscle in your mind and you have to train it just like other people do. You see people in the gym that have big muscles because they have taken time to train those muscles and then they break down and then they give the proper supplements to make them stronger. So the first 4 days are always going to be rough. And then you get through the first week. By the time you hit your second week, you begin to build a bit of a routine because you've gotten through that first few days of doubt and you eventually get adjusted, right? Your body starts to get normalized to the water. You're not taking a piss 4 times a day because your body's like, what do I do with all this water? This is a lot for me. Eventually, you begin to regulate and you get adjusted to those things. And what you begin to notice when you start recognizing this routine and these habitual situations that you're putting yourself in over and over again, going to the gym, waking up early, so on and so forth, is that you're taking a big goal, which is 75 days, this program, and you're breaking it down into smaller sections. And I'll reiterate, if you've listened to any episode of this podcast, I think I've said this on every episode, on the solo episodes, on every guest episode. It's all about taking a big task, something that's hard to comprehend, and breaking it down into small pieces. So instead of looking at, I have 2.5 months of things to do, how about I just have one day of work to focus on? I have these 2 workouts. Within these 2 workouts, I got these sets. Let me focus on this. Okay, it's done. Now it's behind me. Let me focus on the next thing. How's my water doing? How's my diet doing? Check, check, check. Did I take my photo? Check. Day's over. All right, day 2. Let's start over again. So that's how you begin to build that routine and become successful. And then it becomes easy. And then it gets really hard because you get to a state of monotony where you've been doing the same thing over and over again. And then you begin to question, do I need to change? Is there something wrong? Why am I not feeling like I was feeling 20 days ago on day 30? And I'm saying day 30 because day 50 was where I started experiencing this. Day 50 to 59, right? Because that's 1.5 months in, almost 2 months, but you still have another 25 days, still have another month, right? And this is where something that is inevitable with this program, and that is that you will begin to look for more challenges. So I said earlier about a triathlon that someone had reached out to ask. At this point, I went from running and never cycling to becoming a runner and cycling almost 250 miles a week. And that was, 4 or 5 days a week. And doing a century as well, which was a 100-mile bike ride. So at this point, I'm asking myself, can you do this? Yes, you can. Can you do this? Yes, you can. Can you do this? Yes, you can. Because what I was doing prior is starting to become easy, right? So I talk about this idea of scalability. If somebody is 400 pounds, if you're 400 pounds and you can't run 6 miles, but you can walk for 45 minutes, if you do that for 40 days, that 45-minute walk, it will begin to feel easy. And then you start to scale your workouts properly. And that's something that Andy talks about is you will begin to scale the challenges as your body becomes more ready for them. So I had begun looking for something new, and that's when that triathlon opportunity came out. And that's when I took it upon. I said, okay, well, I just have to swim. I already know how to bike and run. What's a swim, right? Little did I know that would be a really difficult thing for me to get through in the coming days after 75 hard. But nonetheless, it was still a great opportunity to take on a new challenge, to put yourself in that position where you're uncomfortable and then eventually grow. Like I said in the beginning, sometimes the smart route is not the route where you find growth and develop and evolve as a person. Another challenge within the 75 hard program, as you get further and further into it, I said earlier, the stakes get higher. And when the stakes get higher, that means there's more at risk, right? There's also more opportunities that you've been put in where you have the opportunity to deviate. Whether it's a birthday party, whether it's a holiday, whatever it may be, there's going to be an opportunity to drink or to have a cheat meal or to deviate. If your partner wants you to do this, but you know you need to stick to this regimen, it's really challenging to not deviate and not to give in, right? I would say it's important to have the people around you, your community and your environment, to recognize and support what you're trying to go through, because that can only help you. If you have people around you that are questioning why you're doing something, then they don't understand and they don't really want what's best for you. Truly, that's the reality. And what I'm getting down to here is this idea of obsession. You have to become obsessed with the goal that you're pursuing. On a day-to-day basis, every decision that you make as you get further into this, you have to consider every decision that you make on a day-to-day basis, whether it's going to improve your life or hold you back. So every meal you eat, every plan you make, that's what it really boils down to as you get deeper and deeper into this. It's something that you can practice so that you can apply it into other areas of your life and past 75 hard after these 2.5 months are over, right? One of the things that I struggled with after 75 hard was the lack of structure. And that's something that's intended to be a challenge in itself, is that what happens when the guardrails are gone and you don't have this regimen to stick on? What happens when, if you don't do something, you don't lose all the progress you've made, right? And that's the reality. Is I've seen people who have not completed the 75 days, but have derived the value of the whole program in itself. Like, what's the intent of 75 hard is to build those mental discipline attributes, those characteristics of self-control, of accountability, all those things. And if you have felt that you've gained that, 40 days and something happens, as long as you still continue on in your life and you've changed and you've had that shift, that mental shift, then you've taken away what you need to take. You may not be a completionist of the program, but at the end of the day, what's more important, saying that you're a completionist of 75 hard or being a better person and treating your life of more value because you've learned that you are capable of these things and that this is how you need to go on with your life from this point forward. So when I talk about this idea of obsession, it sounds aggressive, right? But it's really not, because we already make those decisions on a day-to-day basis. You wake up, you have breakfast, you have that choice. What do I want? I'm at Starbucks. Do I want to get this 300-calorie drink or do I want to get just a black coffee, right? You have that choice. Something that I joke about and I've talked about on the introductory episode of this podcast is the idea of an NPC. So what is an NPC? An NPC is a non-player character, and it's a term from video games. So if you've ever played any video game and you see or interact with a computer player, that's an NPC. So an NPC in this context is something or somebody who has his decisions or her decisions predetermined, doesn't have to think about anything, and everything's, like I said, already predetermined. That's as simple as it is. I think there are way too many people out there, including myself at some point. I'm not trying to say that I was not this person, who are NPCs. And why do I say that? It's because you are constantly making decisions every single day and not thinking about the impacts down the road, right? Am I making this decision? Is this improving my future self or is it hurting myself, right? Is this going to be a good meal for my children or not? Is this a good thing for me or is it not, right? Should I go to this thing? Should I go out drinking? Is that going to make me better? Is that going to improve my day tomorrow or not? And I was an NPC for a very long time. I would say all the way up until close to the end of college, where I was just living and not thinking about anything that I was doing. And that involved smoking weed and drinking and partying, which is age appropriate. I understand I was in college, but it's a matter of trying to consider what is going on with who you are now, and is this going to be a benefit for who you're going to be in the future? And I want to be transparent about this stuff because it's a lot to process as a person if you don't think this way, where you're considering every single decision that you make. And I'm not talking about getting anal about this, like getting super granular, but it gets to a point where it's easy to think about your decisions every single day. It's like, okay, well, am I going to work out after work? Well, if I'm going to do that, I need to pack before. Am I going to eat like shit today? Am I going to drink Coke? Am I going to do this, do that? Those decisions are things that can alter how your day will end. And people always say, if you start the day well, it'll, become an idea of compounding interest, where you eat a good breakfast, you end up eating a good lunch, and so on and so forth. I agree with that to a certain extent, but you'll still have that option. You can still deviate. You can have a great morning, a great lunch, a great dinner, and then go out and booze for 8 hours and ruin the whole thing. So I'm not trying to talk about this NPC concept as a way to degrade anybody. I'm just trying to express that try to be more mindful about the things that you're doing on your day-to-day basis and see how it can impact your life in the long run. Even if it's in a few months, like this program, 75 days, 2.5 months, not even 3 months long. And I also want to express that I understand that I am who I am, right? I'm not you and you're not me. I don't have children. I'm not married. I didn't have a job at this time. So therefore it was easy, right? I have no excuse. But that's a scapegoat if you don't understand that. A scapegoat it's an easy way out. It's a way to blame or give a reason to not do something. I'm just trying to express again that I understand those things, and I want to express how I was able to get from where I was to where I am now. And it's going to sound like I'm repeating the beginning of this episode, but it was through this program. It was through 75 Hard. So do your best to not be an NPC. Consider the things that you're doing, the things you're eating, the habits you're building, and say, is this what I want for my life? Is this who I want to be? Because ultimately, we have the decision, we have the power to change who we want to be. And it starts by starting. There's a saying, it says, one day or day one. You have the choice. Do I want to start it one day? Oh, one day I'll do it. Maybe one day I'll start dieting. Maybe one day I'll start working out. Maybe one day I'll start this. Maybe one day I'll start coding. Maybe one day I'll start, learning a new language, whatever it may be, whatever is on your plate that you haven't accomplished. Or today's day one. Today's the day where I'm going to begin. Today's the day where I'm going to stop saying and start doing. And that's going to become a lot easier once you build these mental skills that you're going to get from this program, 75 Hard. So you might be saying to yourself, Daniel, I don't have the motivation, or I don't know my purpose, the fuel source that's going to get me to be able to be successful in a feat like this. And I have a few things to say about this. You don't have to focus on the big goal right now. Just focus on today. Focus on the tasks that you need to accomplish today and see if you can achieve them. And if you can, then you can convince yourself that you can do the same thing tomorrow. And then once you complete them tomorrow, so on and so forth. And then every single day, you start to build momentum. Like I just said, day one or one day. You have the opportunity to begin day one, but it's your choice, right? It comes down to you. It comes down to whether or not you want to make that action. And when it comes to purpose, this is the whole basis of this show, is discovering your purpose. What is your purpose? I don't like motivation. I want to understand what my purpose is, because when you have purpose, you don't matter. It's what you're driving for. If you're a parent, it's your child. Right now, for me, it's becoming the best version of myself. And I oftentimes offer that as a potential opportunity for people who don't know what their purpose is. Do you not know what your purpose is? Then use this for now. I want to become the best version of myself, or I want to at least start becoming the better version of myself than who I am. Because once you hit that realization where you recognize I'm not really on the best path, I'm not really doing the things that are best for me. And this goes back to the idea of like breaking out of that NPC mindset of like, oh shit, I'm actually not on the best path. You can never unchange that perspective shift. So the first step is, okay, I don't have purpose. Well, maybe just try to focus on becoming the best version of yourself. And then as you begin to use this as a fuel source, you might begin to realize what your purpose truly is. In my experience with 75 Hard, I said earlier, I know I keep saying that, but I didn't have an excuse. I had no reason to not do something, right? And I begin to look at that more holistically in life, right? I have 2 legs. How lucky am I? I have 2 eyes. How lucky am I? Everything works. How lucky am I? So there's your reason, right? Because you have the opportunity to do it. So if you have 2 legs, if you have 2 arms, and you can go out for a walk, there's people who wish they could do that and they don't have that opportunity. That's been stripped from them, or they were born without it. So there's your reason to be grateful for what you already have and use that as your fuel source. There's people out there that don't have it. If you're listening to this on a smartphone or a device, there's people out there who don't have that. So like find exactly what you can be grateful for and use that as a fuel source. You're going to find things in your life. I can't depict exactly what it's going to be for who's listening, but there's going to be something in your life that you have that's been given to you that you may not appreciate enough, and you can use that as your fuel to begin. He's like, I'm doing this because I want to show how appreciative I am of the things I have. I'm going to go out and walk because I've been given this life and I don't want to waste it. So there's your fuel source. There's an example. When it comes to getting into a routine, I want to go back a little bit into 75 hard. There's a certain shift that happens in your mind. And I'm talking about this idea of learning to unlearn. So previously, you thought you understood your habits in this format. But now, as you begin to educate and you're learning and you're reading new books and you're discovering new things and you're working out differently and you're meeting people who are teaching you new things, you have to begin to unlearn the things that you thought you understood and then learn the new things. And this is something that I think is transferable in other areas of your life, whether it's religion. There's people who at certain points didn't believe in a religion, didn't believe in God, but will eventually come to that point of realization. So they learned to unlearn what they thought they knew and then began to understand something new. And that's, like I said, transferable in other areas. You can take that information and apply it to whatever you'd like in your life, if it's relatable, if it's not. But that's something, especially like in politics too. People think that they understand a certain way that things work, and in reality, it's not that way. So they have to unlearn the ways that they thought they understood things and then apply it in a different way. I think it's important in life when you're presented with different perspectives to not dismiss them because you think you know something, because you know it a certain way. Invite that different perspective and see where it will lead. See what you can learn from it. And as I said before, this idea of divergent thinking, when you think that way, you may just reinforce what you already know. Like, okay, I thought about it and I actually now believe what I believe even stronger because I've entertained your perspective and I don't think it's valid, right? So you can reinforce that. The last thing that I want to talk about is finishing 75 hard when you get to that finish line. There's this thing that I love to talk about, and it's the idea of earned versus given. When you're given something in life, it's really hard to value it as much as when you've earned it. If I gave you my diploma, it's hard for you to cherish and value it as much as I do because you haven't earned it. It was given to you. If I gave you my Boston Marathon medal, something that required me to train for 9 months, run a qualifying race, run under 3 hours, train again, race Boston, and then obtain that medal and just give it to you, right? Something that I've earned versus something that it's given. It's really difficult to hold the same amount of value to that object or to whatever it is as it is from the person who earned it. And that's the beautiful thing about 75 hard is it's an intangible trophy that you can hold over your head that you can go back to and you can remind yourself that, hey, I did this. I accomplished this goal and I've earned that and nobody can take that away from me. And that's the beautiful thing I love about sports is that it doesn't matter where you're from. There's a common respect that's given, at least in my eyes, and I talk about running a lot, in running that I see when I see other people who are achieving these goals. I have a lot of respect for that because I know the work that has been put in to get to that point. And it's not something that was done in weeks. It wasn't something that was done in months. It was something that was done in years, maybe decades of consistency and dedication and defining that purpose within those people. So I love this idea of earn versus given in the context of finishing 75 hard because nobody can give you that feeling when you finish this program. Debatably for me, it was almost as gratifying as the feeling when I graduated, because I was trying to feel that when on that day when I was on the podium and I, received my degree, but it felt almost artificial, right? Because I knew that there was something wrong. I guess using the example of my graduate degree when I finished my master's program, I felt a little bit better then because I had then obtained these skills that I applied to school, right? And I always talk about the transferability of sports to life. And it's fundamentally derived from pursuing goals like 75 hard. And it's within 75 hard that you're pursuing physical goals. But in reality, it's all mental. It's all about working on your mind, and then your body follows, and then your life follows. It's in that order, exactly. Mind, body, and then life. if you're stuck, if you're in a rut, if you're spinning your wheels, focus on improving your mindset, focus on improving those skills. As a byproduct, your body will begin to follow. And then as a byproduct of that, your life will begin to follow. I promise. I promise. This is the formula to getting it to work. Mind, body, life. The other thing I wanted to mention too is you don't have to sail this ship alone, right? Find a friend. Find someone who's in the same boat as you that may need a catalyst like 75 Hard. Hey, let's do this together. Hey, let's go to the gym together. Maybe they're not willing to do that, but they're willing to join you on some runs or go to the gym with you. Ask for help. That's what I'm trying to say. You can use me as a resource. If you, a complete stranger, reach out to me on the Painful Purpose Instagram or my personal Instagram and say, hey, I listened to your podcast about 75 Hard, and you offer that you're willing to talk about things, I am more than willing to help. And I think a lot of people are willing to help. There's no better feeling than to provide value to somebody who's trying to improve their life. I think that there's a lot of people in our ecosystem, in our environment, that would be willing to help, whether it's family or friends, to just get advice. And even at the highest level, I started triathlon and I moved to Colorado. And there's a lot of people who do that here at the highest level. And I reached out and I asked questions to people on social media, people who do this professionally, who do it for a living, don't do anything else but focus on 3 sports. And almost every time I've reached out, I've never been ignored. I've always heard responses and people are willing to help. So don't ever think that you can't reach out for advice, because people will always be willing to help, especially if it's their forte. If it's something that they're specialized in, they're going to want to help. They're going to want to share the knowledge. They're going to want to go through the things that they struggled with and help you avoid those, right? The other thing is you can also develop a relationship like this by obtaining a coach. And that might cost money, but that's another resource. There's outlets to being able to get to that place that you need to be. Maybe it's in school, like you want to get a tutor because you want to get to this goal, this SAT, whatever it may be. There's resources like that. You don't have to do it all by yourself. That's essentially all I have to talk about with the 75 Hard program today. I really love this program for so many reasons. I think it's changed so many people's lives, people that I know, myself included. I'm very grateful for Andy Frisella and the lessons that he teaches. We're going to include his podcast and his social media. His podcast is called Real AF in the description. If you guys would like to check that out, there's a lot of great stuff on there. He's so well spoken. It's really motivating. I'm hoping this podcast was close to 45 minutes, because if it is, then you can throw it on for your first workout and it's hopefully a motivator or a catalyst. You can listen to this and it's going to get you amped, right? Like I'm ready. I'm ready to fight. But sooner or later, it's not going to feel as impactful on the 20th listen, right? And that's the whole idea of motivation versus purpose, is trying to find that thing that's going to let you pursue those goals for long periods of time. And that's still what I'm after. If you guys would like to stay in touch with us, like I said, we're on Instagram and TikTok. We have like a lot of short form content on there, just short clips from our podcasts. And then if you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, taking a few seconds to leave a rating really helps us out and means a lot to us and helps support the channel. We're also on YouTube. If you guys are watching us, joining us here today outside, then you could always subscribe to us on YouTube. That would really help us out, keep supporting the channel, never missing an episode. We really appreciate that. Also sharing this with somebody. If something today stuck with you or reminded you of somebody, just send it to them and see what happens. If you know of a friend or family member that's going through something that 75 Hard might improve their situation or help them get off of the track that they're on, then send this to them. It can't hurt them. It can only help. But that's it for this episode of The Painful Purpose. Until next time, stick to the plan, and I'll see you guys soon.